Fong, actually, that's for this. This is the warm-up question for you.
Okay, since Kumar, since you're on time, unlike everybody else, we'll go ahead and answer your question first. It's a very good question, right? And so, what you're doing here is you're balancing both. You, like a lot of other folks, you have your I-140
Actually,
filed. It seems relatively close to July 2016, but you're doing this at the end of the day. You also have a kid, right? And so, I answered this question as both an attorney and as a parent myself. If in your particular situation, like I think part of life is you need good options. You need to be able to hedge correctly. And so you have your I-140 running in the background. But the reality is I think if you talk to most folks who have priority dates earlier than that, right? Even in 2015, they are not exactly confident that it will be current by the time at any time within this decade. So I think those of you with children, who are 15 and a half, 16, they're about to go to college, it makes sense to still do EB-5, partly for a number of reasons, right? And part of it is if you crave like some sort of predictability and stability, you want to file before September 2026. That's the only way you can guarantee that your family is protected. If your EB-5, if your I-140 somehow becomes current, fantastic. But I do know that we have a number of folks, even with 2015 priority dates, that are filing because they are just worried about the same exact situation. So it's ultimately a very personal decision, but I think given your background, I would say a lot of people would opt to file for EB-5 for that reason.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for starting off with the question. That's great. But I think we're at 7:06, so we'll go ahead and get started. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us on a Saturday night. Welcome to the webinar, and we are hosted jointly by Beyond International and KLDP, an immigration firm that specializes in EB-5 immigration. My name is Robin. I'll be your host today. I'm a business development manager that specializes in EB-5 immigration at Beyond International. So it's my privilege to walk you through what is shaping up to be one of the most important EB-5 conversations we've put together this year. Today's session is called Advanced Source of Funds and Adjudication Trends, What's Changed in 2026 and What It Means for Your Filing. So just a few housekeeping items before we begin. The webinar is being recorded, so we'll send a copy to everyone who registered. So if you need to step away or you want to share it with your spouse, your CPA, your immigration counsel, you'll have it. Please use the Q&A function, not the chat, for any questions you have during the program. Our panel will address them at the end. The Q&A function is usually at the bottom of your Zoom window. With that out of the way, let's get to the substance. So here's what we're going to cover in the next hour. First, path of funds versus source of funds. This is the distinction that's triggering the majority of RFEs we're seeing in 2026. Fong and Hallie will walk you through what's holding up under current adjudications and what isn't. Second, the 2026 RFE and NOID pattern. What's changed across self-directed IRAs, HELOCs, margin loans, gifts from family members, and unsecured lending. Several of these categories have shifted significantly, and if you're filing this year, you need to know what's different. Third, capital protection structures, bridge financing mechanics, senior loans versus first lien positioning, and what each label means when it comes to your priority in capital recovery. Labels matter, but the underlying documents matter more, and we'll show you how to tell the difference. And fourth, we'll close with a look at the role of the NCE Manager in protecting your investment, and we'll walk through Beyond Paradise, our active rural EB-5 project in Hawaii. It's a real-world example of how these structures come together. We'll wrap up with live Q&A. So again, please put your questions in the Q&A panel as they come up. No need to wait until the end. So briefly introducing our guest speakers today. Thank you so much for joining us. These are the three people you'll be hearing from. Fong Lee is a partner at KLDP, our first featured speaker, and he's one of the most experienced EB-5 attorneys practicing in the United States. He has personally advised over $2.5 billion in EB-5 deals across commercial real estate, multifamily, charter schools, hotels, medical office, and franchise businesses. He successfully advised on more than 2,000 EB-5 petitions with investors from China, Vietnam, South Korea, Russia, Brazil, the Middle East, and beyond. Before going into private practice, Fong was in-house counsel at a major Southern California EB-5 regional center, where he managed over $500 million in EB-5 financing, and importantly, he led that company through their first 100 I-829 approvals. Fong serves on AILA's National EB-5 Committee. He lectures and trains other attorneys on EB-5 source of funds, and he is widely consulted as a peer reviewer for other EB-5 firms. So when other attorneys have a tough source of funds case, Fong is often who they call. Hallie Schechter, she's an associate attorney with KLDP who works with Fong as well. So she's going to join Fong. She advises investors on source of funds strategy day in and day out. She works directly with families navigating the documentation challenges of the EB-5 program. And she also brings extensive federal litigation experience, including filing mandamus actions to compel adjudication of stalled petitions. In addition to EB-5, Hallie handles family-based immigration, EB-1A, and national interest waiver petitions, and O-1 non-immigrant visas. She earned her JD from St. Louis University of Law and her undergraduate degree from the University of Miami. Our third and final speaker, Jenny Zahn. She is a CFA. She's the founder and CEO of Beyond Holding Company. Beyond International is an alternative investment management firm specializing in private credit backed by real estate assets. Under Jenny's leadership, Beyond's commercial real estate assets have grown to over $650 million, and the firm was named the Inc. 5000 list of America's fastest growing companies in 2024 and 2025. On the investment immigration side, Jenny has been recognized with the International Contribution Award from IIUSA, the leading EB-5 industry association in the United States. Regional centers under her management have helped over 700 investors obtain U.S. green cards and have successfully returned more than $100 million in capital to investors. That's a number worth pausing on because return capital is the truest measure of an EB-5 sponsor's track record. Jenny will walk us through Beyond Paradise, the rural EB-5 project we have actively raising right now, in the second half of the program. That's when we'll hear from Jenny. So enough from me. You came for the experts. So Fong and Haley, they're going to walk us through source of funds, path of funds, and the 2026 RFE landscape. The floor is yours.
Cool. Well, first of all, thank you to the Beyond team. Thank you, Jenny, Robin, Han, for all your work with this PVT. And thank you for everybody here who has spent, I don't know if I question your decision making, but spending your Saturday night to listen to the EP5 webinar, right? But if you guys are here, we'll do our best to give you guys useful information, hopefully give you a tidbit or two of advice and put you at ease on the next steps of your journey. But yeah. Next slide. So I guess this PPT will be short. We're not good at following PPTs, but we'll tell you about our firm's background. We'll give you an overview of the issues that we're looking at, and we'll give you some closing thoughts and advice before we hand it over to Jenny to talk about her project. So our firm, KLDP, the name is not mysterious, it's just our last names, right, of the four partners. We as a group, we in theory are a business and investment immigration firm. But for those of you who don't know us, we are an EB-5 specialist firm. It's essentially 99% of our business, right? We have actually, and what makes us a little bit different is we handle all stages of life cycle. We have helped over 5,000 EB-5 investors from around the world. In the last few years, our single biggest client base is domestic Indians on H-1B and tech. So as you can imagine, things have been busy. We are also heavily involved on the regional center and project side. We've done over $3.5 billion in RCs and projects. Every single one of them has been approved, every single one of them. So we do both sides, at a very high level, and we combine that knowledge, me and Hallie, to hopefully make you guys through this process with the least amount of white hairs. Next slide, please.
I was testing you to see if you actually knew your entire background and track record, because I think you went through most of this.
I hope so. I hope so. Yeah, so I mean, we in addition to our work, we are involved in industry groups. We sit in national committees. AILA is basically the industry trade lobbying group for every single immigration attorney out there. We sit on that committee. We sit on IUSA's leadership committee. All those things are important because I think in addition to our legal work, we want to have our finger on the pulse of what's coming in the pipeline. Where is the agency headed? What are we hearing from Congress in terms of how amenable are they to reauthorizing EB-5? What red flags do we see so we can plan around it, right? So it's your future as much as ours. And so I think part of it is we want to do the best we can for our investors and our partners, and that's all part of it. Next slide, please. So yeah, in addition to webinars such as this, we publish guidance articles in periodicals and magazines around the world. I think Narelle and I have probably racked up over $1 million or $2 million of frequent flyer miles running around the world. Hallie to join us soon, so we're constantly running around the world and lecturing and giving presentations, and hopefully we'll get a chance to meet some of you soon. Next slide. We don't need to talk about this slide. Yeah, we're on communities and everything else. Let's go to the meat of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, to the fun stuff. That's why you guys are here. So
that's right.
Let's talk about one thing that Hallie and I want to highlight today is I think where are we in the EB-5 landscape in 2026? What issues do we see from the agency? What's triggering RFEs? What's some best practice for source of funds? For some background, I've always said that agency-driven law, what I mean is like say the SEC and securities law, the FDA, and in particular EB-5. The actual law doesn't change very much. There's been like really 2 bills in EB-5 since we started. So the fundamental rules doesn't change very much. So what does change? What changes is the agency's focus, right? Their priorities. USCIS at its core should be really a benefits-driven agency. You submit your application, you qualify, you adjudicate it. However, we are in this current, it's cyclical, right? Right now what we have is an administration that is not so friendly with immigrants. It's quite an aggressive administration, and what we do know is they're trying to find ways to attack cases or deny cases as much as possible. So today, Hallie and I will discuss some trends that we've seen when we're preparing source of funds and everything else. So I guess one thing I've noticed, Hallie, is that, like if you look at the regulations and look at the law, there's always been this element of discretion. So one example I can think of is when it comes to tax returns. It used to be that if you had RSUs and it's clear to us that you made enough in a year or two, you sold your RSUs, we would maybe ask for 1 or 2 years of tax returns, evidence that you sold the RSUs and everything else, and you pay taxes for it. Simple, right? That doesn't quite work anymore. So what we've been seeing from USCIS is that they will issue an RFE or something along those lines, saying that yes, even though it doesn't matter if you show 2 years of sufficient income, the regulations allow us to demand up to 7 years, so we need to give us 7 years. So I say that because this is something you should be aware of when you're either submitting your petition, or after you submit it, you need to be prepared to get those documents, because in all likelihood they will issue an RFE to ask for it. Tax documents take some time to gather. You can get them online or go through your CPA. So we give our investors advice because we don't want to be flat-footed, right? Hallie, you want to talk about what other sort of issues and things that we're seeing, either source of funds or path of funds or things that
you want to go?
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of we say source of funds as kind of one big umbrella term, and it's kind of broken up into actually 2 kind of components. It's your source of funds and your path of funds. So your source of funds is really, how is your money earned or acquired, or that asset, how it was acquired. And then your path of funds is, how did it get from where you earned it all the way to your EB-5 investment. And oftentimes, your funds can transfer through various points through over the years between, you know, how you originally earned it, let's say W-2 income, and then you invest it in a brokerage account, and then you sell some stuff and you move it between your bank accounts, and then you liquidate some stuff, and then you invest into the project. Now that's a lot of points that your funds have traveled on, and something we see in terms of a well-prepared source of funds case, a tightly prepared case, is no material gaps in that sort of documentation. So knowing exactly how your funds have kind of moved along from point A to B to C to D to wherever is something that's going to be really helpful to your attorney who's preparing your case, to yourself as you're getting your documents all together. It could, because we don't just start with okay, well, my funds are in it, the source is my brokerage account. Well, okay, like how did it get there and what else is in there? So it's something we're definitely seeing is it's important not to have any gaps between your documentation and then anything along those points that the funds have traveled on. And like Fung said, the 7 years of tax returns, that also 7 years also encompasses kind of how far back we're going to go in terms of all financial documents as well, assuming that's how long it took you to earn and accumulate your funds. So be prepared to kind of get together 7 years of bank statements and such as well.
I'm raising my hand because I have a question for Hallie.
Yeah,
Hallie,
go ahead.
Hallie,
What's up?
if I have really complex source of funds and it's going from my RSU brokerage account, it's going to my checking account, then I move it to my high yield savings account, then I move it to my Charles Schwab brokerage account. Is it helpful to have a diagram or some explanation for both the law firm and USCIS?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Fung, and the answer is yes. The way that I kind of like to describe, source of funds to clients is it's like doing a puzzle. So your documents are the pieces of the puzzle, and that explanation, that diagram, that flow chart is going to be that picture on the outside of the box. So that sort of guidance that you can give to your attorney gives, it decreases the amount of time that we're spending putting together that puzzle without a picture. It creates a easier way forward for us, for the adjudicator. It's just a cleaner process overall. So yeah, always a diagram, an explanation. Even if you want to draw it on paper, that's always really helpful. So that way, it's easier to put together your documents and your source of funds and understand, what the complexities are.
Hallie, I know I said I was going to talk a bunch, but I lied, so I want to hear you keep talking. So I'm going to give you another question. So one thing that happens a lot, right, Hallie, that I've seen is, so everyone here has a checking account. And I think one of the things that people have to realize is what questions will pop up when you look at your checking account. What I say is, like, in a perfect world, your checking account would simply be your salary being directly deposited, you pay your bills, and that's it. In reality, that's not what happens, right? We have 1,000,001 things. We have Cash App deposits, we have Zelle, we have Venmo, we have mysterious deposits coming from friends and family. Hallie, what do you think we should do about that, or what steps can we take to prepare?
Before you are, as you're getting ready to kind of engage with an attorney, start with, moving forward on your source of funds, combing through your bank statements and, highlighting those transactions. Typically what I look for when I'm reviewing statements is anything over $500, any, single deposit. And starting to find documentation for that depending on what it is. If you get a insurance reimbursement, finding that receipt from State Farm. If you, went on a vacation, a group trip, I was just at a wedding last weekend and I paid for, a bunch of stuff for the wedding party. And so the bridesmaids, Venmo'd me back for things. So having those receipts together, those sort of things, explanations for deposits, those are all really helpful because, and we can also move on to the next slide. This comes up in the RFEs and stuff, is that's something that we're seeing a big trend on today is, USCIS picking at commingling of funds. even if it's just a couple $100s, $1,000, a small gift from your parents, something like that. Knowing where those deposits are can be helpful for when you engage with an attorney in preparing your case.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. And so part of it is, it's helpful to give your attorney some background about your saving habit. Like basically, when your money comes in, what do you do with it, right? Or maybe another thing is just because. So one thing I want to say is this: just because you have a whole bunch of deposits coming in, it doesn't mean that it's fatal, right? But you do have to address it and preempt it, because the last thing you want is for the government to become curious, like what's going on here. If you give them a logical answer, and on top of that, you basically say have a declaration and confirm that, look, there's a number of unrelated deposits or expenses in my account. However, those are personal expenses, and this is what it was used for. However, none of those funds were used for my EB-5 because it came from this. That in itself is very helpful. Some examples I can think of that probably applies to a number of people is that I remember in Arizona I saw like this. We had a client that every single month they would get 20 deposits of like various hundreds of dollars or like $50. We're like, what in the world is this? It turns out this guy has had 50 friends and family in his T-Mobile family plan for the last like 10 years. And so after all this time, he still pays the bills right when he gets reimbursed, right? So it's better to just give some background to explain those kind of things. There's steps you can take. I think as long as you lay it out there, it should be okay. Another thing is that I'm thinking about this in terms of also properly preparing if you're trying to file your case within about 2 months or so. If part of your, so one of the things that we always do when we do source of funds is during the consultations, we want to know where your money is saved. Like Hallie said, it's like a puzzle, right? We're trying to figure out what puzzles to work, what pieces to work with here. And part of that is not only what accounts you have, but whether some of these accounts, the money's going to be tied up a little bit more. If that's the case, we might have to plan a strategy around maybe we use some of this money that's more immediate now and later on. Some examples are those of you with stock trading windows. Sometimes you're restricted from trading your stock at certain like 1 to 2 month intervals. If that's the case, let us know, right? Or those of you who are in the process of rolling to an SDIRA or applying for a HELOC and everything else. All those things are possible. We just need to know which accounts you're drawing from so we can plan accordingly. So, and it's useful because it's not just for a source of funds, but on the project side, you're talking to say Jenny and Robin, it helps to understand where you are in the process. So if you're trying to hold a slot, it helps them hold a slot. One issue that comes up a lot that we've seen is SDIRAs. So is SDIRAs, is it still being used? Is it still being approved? Do people still use them day in, day out? The short answer is yes. Our firm created like essentially the SDIRA strategy for the investors and everything else. We've written white papers and articles about it. But to me, the fundamental thing is this. Everyone has retirement money. So basically, is there a way to access the retirement money, invest in the EB-5, keep it tax advantage, and get it approved? The short answer is yes. What it does, there is a process that has to be done. You have to roll it over to what's called an SDIRA account. What you can roll over is this. If you have your own separate IRA account that you funded throughout the years, or you have old employer's 401k account, you can roll all of that over to an SDIRA, invest it into, use that portion to invest in EB-5, and it stays tax advantage. It's not a distribution. It's not a withdrawal, so there's no penalties and no taxes. That portion of whether you're investing in any interest, any repayment will, in the future will come back to your SDIRA account. Once that happens, you can invest into it like anything else, right? So it's a powerful tool, especially because most investors are, really, there's only so much leverage resources you can pull from. So if that's a possibility for investors, I would highly recommend you do so.
Related to that, we've had the SDIRA situation come up recently a couple of times, and we're using the custodian Alto. Is that something, do you all use similar, do you use other custodians? Are there certain ones you recommend over others?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's only a handful of SDIRA custodians who are, I would say, experienced in EB-5, but not all custodians are, I would say, necessarily good at what they do, right? Also in particular, they do know what they're doing. And part of that, and we know that because when we first started this, it was Alto that we worked with and trained with, and we trained them to do the proper documents. So Alto knows what they're doing, they're licensed, so the reason why they're important is Alto is one of the companies that received an RFE or a NOID about their system, their process, and everything else. And it got approved. We responded, it got approved. We prepared responses for other people, it got approved. So you're probably wondering, what exactly did it RFE? So I remember when this issue first popped up, and we're in these WhatsApp groups. We see the discussions on Reddit. We see the Discord groups and everything else, right? Regardless of whether we join. You have to understand that just because an RFE or NOID is issued, it doesn't mean USCIS is correct. You actually look at the language of these RFEs and NOIDs. They were not questioning whether you could use an SDRA. They weren't questioning whether it was legal. It was actually pretty funny. What they were questioning is, prove to us that Alto IRA is licensed or regulated to open up a custodial account. It's almost like asking, prove to us that Fidelity or Charles Schwab is licensed to open up a brokerage account. And we're like, if you Google Alto and you go on the webpage, they've managed over like 50 billion in assets with 3,000 accounts, right? They've been around business for 20 years. So we worked with Alto, we told them what we needed. We got their business license, we got their registration, we got every single document you can think of to show, and we submitted that. Another thing that happened was they were wondering, like, if this money belongs to you, why is Alto signing for you? You know, well, part of that is Alto signs because the money belongs to you. Alto is signing as a custodian. Alto will do nothing if you don't tell them to do so. So we explain all those things to USCIS. It's really an educational issue, and I don't expect this to be an issue for any SDRA moving forward, so long as it's set up correctly.
Thank you.
There's other issues I'm sure that we can discuss all day and bring up and everything else, but we'll keep that for Q&A. In the interest of time and your weekend, we'll pass it on to Jenny to discuss, your 956F approved rural project and everything else. So, Jenny, go ahead.
Sure. Before I go there, there's a quick question you can probably you can answer quite quickly. Someone actually related to Cash App and Zelle transaction. What if they are from over 5 years ago and we do not really have a receipt or document for that?
Declaration. A declaration. So the basic rule is if the primary evidence doesn't work, then essentially primary evidence as in receipts, right? Actual documents or whatever else. You can use secondary evidence, such as sworn declaration. So what source of funds to me really is not so much a legal concept, it's a credibility issue. And like it has to make sense, right? So the thing is, everyone has Cash App and Zelle transactions, but generally speaking, it should not be in the thousands of dollars unless, unless there's a good reason for it. For example, we have a rental property. Our tenant each month Zells us, her rent. That's an easy enough transaction to explain. Otherwise, if it's a bunch of transactions about like, you're splitting up bills and everything else, just explain a declaration. It should make sense. So yeah.
Sounds great. Well, Fong is a real expert. Now, I know a lot of people coming here already applied in what type of immigration. And some of them are in the EB2 waiting, and some are in EB3 waiting. I also met some people waiting in the EB1A programs as well. So, EB5 is a way, so far, is the fastest way for Indian and Chinese to receive green card. And, but the challenge is, a lot of people using EB5 as alternative. How you select a project, especially, how to get the money back. And USCIS already right now signed 956F approval, and very strictly, actually, the process of I-956F approval is become very strictful. And so it's very easy to determine the project already received at least immigration project level approval for EB5 immigration. That helps resolve a lot of immigration related issue. Now the next stage, and a lot of investors coming actually want to see how then find a project likely to pay their investment on time. This becomes very important, I know, for a lot of investors. Now, in order to do that, I would say a lot of people go to capital stack immediately, discuss loan to value, discuss its senior position or mass position. Although our project is senior, I have to say, seniors, first of all, not all the seniors are the same. And also, it's not just to select a senior capital stack can resolve all your problems. First of all, very important, you have to know who is managing your money. A lot of people thinking just regional center, but actually it's NCE Manager. They do have overlap, but a lot of cases, especially for rural project, NCE Manager and the regional center are not likely to be the same person. It hears the NCE Manager negotiated with the JCE and writing those loan terms. It hears the NCE Manager decides how to manage your money, watch the operation day in, day out. And very important, if project went wrong, and the NCE Manager would be expected to jump on, and finish the project and find the best results for EB5 investors. So is that NCE Manager capable and also willingness to return your money back? And is that NCE Manager is stand firmly and put investor first? That becomes very critical and important. So, and you got looking for the NCE Managers have a desire to return your money back. I would strongly suggest you talk with the NCE Manager how to find their name. It's on your PPM, and you could see their name. And very interesting, for their desire to return your money, you can pick one subject to test that. As we always know, EB5 capital pays very low interest, and sometimes it's hard to raise it. So a lot of NCE managers, some of the NCE managers want to keep as long as possible. Now, and the redeployment become a very sensitive issue. So if you want to test EB5 NCE managers and whether they have a strong desire to align interest with you, redeployment can be a great test. And now for Beyond's cases, we will try, although we will follow the USCIS rules, try to put project down at risk, but at the time, redeployment and project actually return the money, and we will find the most convenient rules for the EB5 investors and to get the money back. So this is a very, very important test. Now, and also we don't view it's fair, for the investor to take an actual risk or past already, previous due diligence. And also the NCE Manager has to have the ability to manage project through different phases, including development phases and operation phases. This would be especially true if your project actually has needed to go through refinancing and needed to, have sign the lease, see the cash, watch out the cash flows. And especially for the projects actually has requires special skill. For example, special like senior housings or hotels, retail shopping centers. The ability to operate those assets, NCE Manager, whether it has been passed the test, become extremely important. Now, and also the NCE Manager, in addition, can raise EB5 money. It also has to have proven track record in raising non-EB5 capital. You know why? Because a lot of developers or the JCEs prefer institutional money, prefer the money actually guaranteed to be raised. And if the NCE manager can only raise EB5 money and without other access of capital, that will run a risk if your project just going to act well. Okay. Now, a lot of people actually looking for projects, actually thinking about capital stack is most important. But I have to say, based on our, 15 years real estate investment experience, and by being managed assets over $650 million at current level, I have to say commercial real estate actually itself, the property itself presents different risks. And the commercial real estate operation, actually how difficult to operate it drives different risk ranks. Of course, the most difficult ones is like speculative special purpose development, and how you define the risk. Actually, a lot of people attending this conference today are engineers. We can use in our common sense. Let's just very easy to ask us ourselves, if the project went wrong, even we are in a senior position, if we receive the property, if the borrower hand a key to us, can we, first of all, finish the project? And the second, can we operate it and either through financing or through sell it? How difficult it's likely to be? And ask yourself, based on common sense, can you do that? Can the NCE manager do that? And some projects are naturally very difficult. If you're looking for EB5's history, and a lot of disaster projects actually came from certain categories. I would say, like ski resorts and like senior housing really experience a lot of tough experience. This is unproportionately in high percentage in the EB5 failure history. And of course, a lot of hotels was among them as well. Now, of course, the JCE manager is also very important. Now, JCE manager is very important thing for select the JCE manager, which is the developer. The JCE manager should not be affiliated with NCE manager. Otherwise, which side of the interest it will be sitting on for that NCE manager? Especially if the NCE manager are also the developer or JCE manager's employee. That is very, very hard to clean the separation of those roles. Now, of course, the JCE manager has to have a strong track record in developing similar properties in the same region. And also very important, if in the professional world, in the professional development world, and the manager usually ask for the JCE manager, usually the lending parties, the party lending money always ask the borrower to accept something called completion and a maximum cost guarantees. Please make sure to see if your JCE manager can provide those kind of guarantees as well. Now, the next thing we're going to discuss is about the capital stack. I met a lot of very smart engineers. Now everyone got concept. Okay, we have to go to senior loan. Of course, senior is better. In the worst case scenario, it's very unlikely senior will lose everything. But not all the seniors same. And even in the senior positions, and different senior positions in different property, different senior, in same called senior, even in the different property type, also will bring you different results. Because you are in the senior position, doesn't mean the project can complete. on time and on budget. And if something worse things happened, it will also impact your senior positions as well. And even in the senior position, if you want to sell or refinance your property, and the liquidity situation for your property actually drives whether or not you can get all your, when you can sell on time. And the valuation, and at that time, at that market time, also determines in your senior position, whether the senior position can get 100% of money back. So, and in a lot of world, in a lot of current project, we saw some of projects utilize called CPACE loan, and also it will put senior loan and consider senior loan as senior EB5 investor in a senior loan, while also have a CPACE on that. I have to say CPACE, by basically associated with your property tax, actually is a superior loan, not just actually a lot of time, because of the nature of it can access on property tax side, and therefore it actually increased the difficulty when you try to refinance your senior loan out. A few of banks, actually sizable amount of banks, are not willing to provide get into the refinancing situation while CPACE exists, although CPACE, you can say it's not a senior loan. And also, how to select a project to mitigate development risk, because development is a construction business, and a lot of development requires a heavily regulated, especially in the early stages. So in order to avoid regulatory risk, the first thing you need to do, pick the project, already get pay the development fee, already get approved all the permits, can under the constructions right now. And also, this comes again, avoid the property itself requires special license to operate. For example, like a senior housing, and a lot of senior housing, even you are fully developed, it requires extra amount of regulation rule in order to operate it. And also mitigate, if we needed to mitigate construction risks, we have to learn from the institutions. Pick projects with a completion guarantee and a maximum cost guarantee. Another risk is also very common in EB5 industry, and in the construction industry as well. And the project, for example, EB5 leasing is at will based. It's best effort and best effort based. Some of the project can't raise all the amount as it stated in the PPM. So whether or not the NCE manager can access other portion of capital becomes very important. The project, in short, can't just rely on the EB5 money. Now, when at last, if in order for EB5 money to exit on time and get full money back, we have to face another risk. That's called market risk. Market risk is always associated at time when you try to do refinancing and you try to sell the project. So in addition to pick projects with a reasonable exit price, can execute a reasonable exit price. And also it is very important, we have to notice real estate, the challenge for real estate is liquidity. A lot of real estate in a special market, a lot of special real estate type may not have sufficient liquidity. This is impact on the exit of those type of properties. Now, talking about market value, market price, and a lot of people will come to me and talk about, hey, you look at that. This is a project loan to value is only 30%. This loan to value is only, so if this is better than the loan to value of 70%. Be very careful on that. The future real estate value, which is really matters at our exit time. But that value, it could be the biggest guesstimate. Why? Because when talking about real estate values, they're usually, it's very common using 3 types of valuation methodology. First of all, a lot of commonly used ones is a lot of very liquid assets is usually use something called replacement value. But the replacement value doesn't mean your construction cost. You know, in the market, if your assets, real estate assets, is not that liquid, okay, and in the market is quite cold, the operation-driven assets usually sell at a discount in the cold market, which means operation-driven assets. Those assets, their valuation have to heavily rely on, you know, how you operate that. You know, for example, in a hotel or a senior centers, okay, their income and their revenue actually drives the value. If it's a bunch of, you know, concrete and cement, it doesn't mean much. So if you just sell based on the concrete, and you have to sell it in a discount. So the more heavy, if a real estate is more, the more heavy, if the real estate type is based on the operation, the most likely, you know, the replacement value will be lower if the real estate assets doesn't reach its projected operation results. Now, the other way to calculate the valuation is comparable value. But comparable value is only very meaningful in a liquid market with liquid assets. What type of assets are very liquid? Houses. Residential houses are much more liquid, you know, much easier to share the comparable value than the other real estate, especially compared to commercial real estates. And because of available supply of those assets, especially in people wanted area. And another very common commercial real estate, when you calculate valuation, it goes with income capitalization model, which is very common, especially in commercial real estate financing. If financing is likely to be a major way for you to exit and get your money back. Now, how income capitalization model works? It requires 2 elements. One is called net operating income. Now, this requires a real estate not just being built, but has experienced operations, showed stabilization, and you can have a financial statement to show net operating income. Please note, this is not just a rental income, not just the top line, but also the cost as well. We saw in the history, a lot of good EB5 project can reach the occupancy, okay, 90%, 95%, and because cost actually increased dramatically, operating costs increased dramatically, so NOI, net operating income, is lower than what it was projected. So at that time, the refinancing can't even reach to cover the full, senior positions. And also the valuation itself in addition to NOI, it also have another data called cap rates. So the value itself is NOI divided by cap rates. That cap rates is in the denominator level, and the higher it goes, actually the lower the valuation. And the cap rates itself it's highly sensitive to interest rates and highly correlated with different property types and the location of the properties. So commercial real estate value itself, it is quite volatile and quite unpredictable, based on different type of market situations. It is relatively easy if you want to predict, valuations, talking of value, pick assets. I would say pick assets actually liquid in a liquid market for liquid assets. Look at residentials, especially for sale houses. Everyone can access these days Zillow. Can access a lot of things. It's much easier at your fingerprint. You can compare the value instead of go to such kind of lenses and have to rely on future NOI and future cap rates. Now this was the reason why we pick and selected the Kona project. It is for sale townhouses, and our team actually has experienced not only the residential development, we also experienced now managed about 650 million worth of different real estate assets, commercial real estate assets, including shopping center, apartments, and office buildings. We have helped about 1,200, more than 1,200 investors to immigrate to the United States. And for this project, we also committed 20 billion bridge loans for this project, while allows this project to start earlier and allow EB5 actually replace the bridge loan. Now our project, like I mentioned before, is a residential townhomes project. It's for sale project located in Kona, and it's only half an hour away from Kona International Airport. And this is in a very few resort area in Kona, Big Island, Hawaii. And the units, we are planning to build 120 units of two bedroom to 4 bedrooms. And this resort itself is very comparable to in the price, and you consider as competitive priced luxury in the area. And the EB5 size is we're going to plan to raise about 24 million in EB5, overall like 30 slots, and right now about 17 slots actually been committed, only 13 slots has been left. And the position is in the senior collateralized loan position in the first priority. And for the EB5, for first one project, we have on average 41 jobs for pre-investors. And the term of investor, the loan agreement is 3 years with 1 year extension. And the project is under construction right now. And the project, EB5 project itself is already, on the immigration side, it's already achieved about 3 milestones. We have I-956F approval. Our early investors already received I-526E approval and received a temporary green card. And we so far, more than half of the investors actually received the EAD approval. And the unique part of our EB5 project, I have to mention about in our immigration denied or withdrawn. You may have seen a lot of projects actually have I-5 to 6E denied. Similar like a lot of projects, we actually give 3 months refund window, and you can receive your money back. And for anyone, for some reason, they don't want to do immigration anymore, and we provide something called immigration withdrawal. If for the investors, the first investor raised questions, ask about whether it's suitable for it. If for our project, if anyone is already in the EB2, EBC3 waiting list, you can apply our project. If your EB2, EB3 moves faster than the EB5, and anytime you want to withdraw from our project, we can actually provide a 6 months window, find a different source of capital, and to replace you out. This is very unique to us, and I think it's very unique among EB5 projects as well. Now, for this 120 townhome project, the average price is around like 1.5 million, and very attractive in the local market at this moment. Now, couple of our key project differentiators, including this is in a resort, built in a resort area. This is oceanfront resort. All our townhomes has windows, can see the ocean view, can enjoy the beautiful, sunset in Kona. This is the senior position with first lien. And in our project, like a lot of institutional lender, we request completion and maximum cost guarantees. And our regional centers and is experienced regional centers, it has successfully actually helped over 700 EB5 investors receiving green card, and so far has returned about 190 million money back to the investors. And our developer has a 70 years history and developed 3 projects in Kona and in the similar results. And this project, being a rural TA project with I-956F approval, is in the priority processing. It was actually clearly in the priority processing under the USCIS current rule. And we have ample job creations for the investors. And this is you could see the EB5 size, the loan size actually is relatively small compared to a lot of developers' equity, as well as other equities, other positions, as the lower positions. And our developers has pledged its ownership interest in the JC as a collateral to the lenders. We have not only pledge agreement, ownership certificate, we also filed a UCC to make sure and no one can be easily, mistaken and put in a position before us. And we have, like I mentioned, again, we have due guarantee, completion, and a maximum cost guarantee. And our project, our developers has let me put the one a little bit, in Kona and Hawaii, shortage of housing is a common theme in Hawaii. And you guys probably heard about Silicon Valley has high housing prices. And but please take a look at Hawaii. The nation's #1 shortage of housing places actually is in Hawaii. And why? And there are too much restrictions to get to develop houses. For example, in this area, in the Kona area, in last 45 years, only 3 resort projects has been approved, and all 3 of them actually affiliated with our developers. So the first project our developer developed in Kona actually has quadrupled its money, and at this moment, and we expect our project will be in a lot of interest as well, strong interest from Kona local and people from different West Coast area, including from Silicon Valley, from Canada, and all interested in this, a rental project. Plus, I forgot to mention, this resort is among the less than 10% of Hawaii homes actually has the right to rent for short term. So Hawaii right now actually set up a much stricter rule, requires registration if someone wants to do short-term rental. This is going to benefit our resort even better. Now, for the development, this is the development photos from the site, and this is the drone footage captured on April 21st, 2026. And you can see our horizontal development is almost finished, and we're doing the slot right now and putting into vertical pretty quickly. And the project is going to enter pre-sale stage in the second half of this year. And even before the pre-sale started, we already received strong interest and for this project to start to sell. And I just leave the questions and Robin, we can open the floor and leave the people for the Q&A.
It looks like there is one question about the total project cost. What is the total project cost? 24 million plus 20 million is the question. So if you want to answer that, Jenny, 24 million is the total EB5 investment.
Yeah, 24 million is EB5 investment. The project itself is cost about 100 million.
Okay, and we do have a lot of questions that Fong and Hallie have answered in the answered section just by typing. So if you all want to make sure you've reviewed those, but we do have a lot of questions around the source of funds, sell, Venmo, things like that. So is the explanation of transactions needed for all Zelle transactions? I used my checking account to transfer money to brokerage account from RSU account after selling the shares, and I will be using only the money in the brokerage account for EB5. The checking account also has multiple Zelle transactions.
I see we scared the crap out of everybody, huh? And now you guys all look at your bank statements. Look, guys, so it's like we bring it up because it's a common sense kind of thing, right? If you have multiple transactions going in and out, it makes sense to give some background information and and basically preempt the issue. So part of it may be that it's never hurts to have a declaration explained from